And hello, welcome to Literally Alive. We are literally live with Literally Alive. My name is Robert Diamanti, and I'm very happy to be hosting tonight's program, Poets Read From Enough, Poems of Resistance and Protest. Literally Alive is, of course, brought to you by Littoral Books, Maine's independent publisher of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction books based in Portland, Maine. Visit the website to purchase titles such as Kate Kennedy's Skin, Mast Year by Catherine Hagopian Berry, North by Northeast, an anthology of Maine writers, fiction, and of course tonight's book, Enough, Poems of Resistance and Protest. I'll go ahead and drop that URL right in the chat for everyone, so you can go right there and purchase books. And speaking of chat, let's go over a few things that seem to work really well for our programs. First, I want to remind everyone that tonight's events will be recorded and shared on Littoral Books' website. If you are joining us as a guest, please turn off your audio and your video to help us preserve bandwidth. Oh, I've got to admit more people. Right on, right on. Wonderful, wonderful. Can everyone hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. Right on. If you're joining us as a guest, please turn off your audio and video to help us preserve bandwidth. You will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end of the program. But don't let that stop you from commenting. Please type in your thoughts as each of our talented poets reads. And of course, there are reaction buttons when you don't know quite what to say, but you're moved to show what you feel at the bottom of your screen. Kate, can I ask you to mute yourself and shut off your video, please?
You got it.
We're preserving bandwidth, but I did plug Skin. Stay tuned at the end of the program. We will be announcing our upcoming November event. Now, I don't want to waste any more time. First up is Agnes Buchel, author and co-editor of Enough. She will say a few words about it, how it all came together. Agnes, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. I just wanted to say a few words about how this book came into being and to introduce my co-editor, Clare Milliken, who can't be here tonight because she's recovering from an illness, but she did send us a recording of her reading one of the poems from Enough. The way this book came into being is Clare, in June, sent an email out of the blue to Littoral Books saying that she had written a poem, an elegy for George Floyd, and that she knew that there were other poets in Maine who were also writing poems about his death and about the protests that were happening all over the country, as well as in Maine. And she wondered if Littoral Books would be interested in publishing this book, a book of poems, which she saw as a very small book, maybe 5 or 6 poets. Jim and I were very enthusiastic about this. We thought this was a great idea. And we reached out to other poets in Maine, Gary Lawless for one, who invited other poets to write, who were writing about the protests, to send us poems. So by the time we were actually deciding on poems, we had 27 poets who had sent us work. And those are the poets who are in Enough. But Clare's poems, the elegy for George Floyd, which consists of 6 separate poems, but within this larger body called the elegy, was the centerpiece of the book, the beginning of the book. And Clare was totally instrumental in making this book happen. She was the one who actually put the poems in order. So when you read the book, the way the poems flow in the book and the way they talk to each other is completely her work. And so I'm really, really happy and pleased and privileged to introduce her and to introduce her to her work to you. through this audio and visual that Robert will put on right now, I hope. So enjoy her work. Robert? Okay.
So yeah, this is Clare Milliken. I'm going to read from my poem, The Elegy for George Floyd, and the section is called Smoke. Smoke. You walk into the store carrying what money you have. What money you have is all you are in a store. Hold it tightly. Sky above, wind in the alleys, the glass doors shimmer. Buy a pack of cigarettes so that your breath will rise and become visible. Smoke circles back. What money you have, how beautiful it can feel in the hand, a $20 bill to buy the cigarettes you crave. They say quitting smoking is harder than quitting heroin. Sky above, wind outside, the wind turns, a dangerous leeway. Try to remember, money is all that matters in America. Try to remember the way out is through the door. Walk away. A shadow paces you, a thin blue line. Trees along city streets look too vulnerable. Hush the sky, for light's endless until it's gone. Breath by breath, trees shift along the street. You should get out now, walk away, leaving only the questionable history of money. Indigo light of crepuscule, it's over. Money is all America holds dear. Afterwards, how to return, breath by breath, how to come back to the place of the sacrificed. Dark trees line the morning walk, a place of endlessness where money becomes ashes. The world goes up in smoke. So yeah, it's a section from a pretty long elegy for George Floyd that's part of my contribution to the book, and that's all I'm going to read. But I wanted to thank all the poets who contributed to this book, and I love you all. And yeah, so that's it. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you, Agnes, so much for introducing that. And I was really glad that Claire could send the video. There was a little bit of a glitch in the middle that was actually a part of the recording. And of course, I apologize in the beginning, the audio. Hopefully everybody heard that, and thank you for coming. If you're just joining us, I'm reminding you to mute yourselves and turn off your video to preserve bandwidth. And I'm thrilled to be introducing Judy Kaber, who has lived in Maine since 1971. She has taught elementary school here for 34 years. Judy has published in a number of journals, including December, Poet Lore, the Comstock Review, Atlanta Review, Spillway. Her 2016 poem, Those Days They Kept the Broken Children, won second place in the Muriel Craft Bailey contest, which was judged by Marge Piercy. She has published 3 chapbooks, Renaming the Seasons, which includes poems mourning the loss of her fellow poet and friend, Carrie Friedman. In Sleep We Are All the Same, a book that includes poetry and historic photos of Belfast, Maine. And A Pandemic Alphabet, with poems that encompass all the various emotional turns of this difficult time. Welcome, Judy Kaber.
I'm really delighted to be here and to be able to read. I'm going to read 4 poems. The first poem was one that was written quite a while ago, 6 years ago. Its title is Eyewitness, and it was written in response to eyewitness accounts of the shooting of Michael Brown on August 9th, 2014 in Ferguson, Missouri. Eyewitness. They say he was crazed. They say he was afraid. They say he got shot in the hand, blood running on his fingers. They say he took off running. They say the officer ran after him. They say the officer didn't run. They say he was on his knees with his hands in the air. They say his hands were up, palms facing the officer, like, okay, you got me. They say he walked back saying, I give up, like the game was over, like this is enough, like put down the controller, let's get a beer. They say he got shot repeatedly. They say a white officer shot an unarmed Black teenager. They say he was a danger to himself, to others. They say he had the demon anger in his face. They say he never put his hands up. They say he was shot in the chest, in the face, in the top of the head, and that's when he fell instantly. They say some people were afraid to testify. They say he staggered forward, wounded, in a gesture of surrender. They say he reached into his shirt for something. They say they know what it feels like to be shot, like nothing, with the adrenaline pumping, body in rampage mode, like a wild hog in the forest. They say a shot is crippling pain, a message of unending bitterness. They say there was blood coming from him. They say he was just a boy. They say there's no justice for a Black boy in America. They say he made a grunting sound and charged the officer. They say it looked like he was bulking up to run through the shots, like he was mad that he was getting shot. They say he looked straight through everything, like the officer wasn't even there, like there wasn't anything in his way. They say they killed him. They say he hobbled to the ground, face on the pavement, paying blood. They say it everywhere. They say it in the streets, in the bar rooms, in the bedrooms. They say there's no justice, only this empty sack of answers. They say, he's dead, man, he's dead. The next poem I'm going to read is one from the anthology Enough. And I really want to thank Claire particularly for inviting me to send some poems in. It's a poem where I'm struggling with my whiteness and my white privilege in sort of an abstract way. It's called A Chocolate Square That Lies on the Tongue. Is not redemption, not the bowl of oranges on the table, not the mask of the night rising outside the window, ready to reveal everything, to lift gray to the ache of color. Not the long stroke of dawn, the longing of the egg in the mother, egg without eyes, without arms, nestled in blood. Not the lush foliage of justice that grows in the crevices of hearts. Not the fever call, not the blemish of stolen breath. Something broken here, pushed down among the rope twist of words, pushed down with knee and hand and hate. In the mouth, a sweetness seeps beneath the hurt, beneath the chop and blunt and blow. Pause a moment. Consider what lies on the tongue, what lies are told about power and those who lie prone. Consider the lie of the land, the way it is stolen, squandered, ground, dismantled, disordered, displayed, splayed like a moth after it hits the light, after it falls, still hoping on the table. A square of chocolate, so sweet, so sweet. Can we eat anything else with this darkness on our breath? The next poem is called Inside the Body, and it was written during the pandemic, and I think that comes through in it, but it also is woven in with a lot of the injustice that's going on continually. Inside the body, my lungs become a honeycomb. Instead of air, I breathe blood. Instead of air, I breathe black men, faces turned against tar, held down, wings clipped, crushed, scattered like dust. Inside me, a bloodstorm, streaming filaments that enter the nearest cells that infect them, punch holes in the vagaries of a nation. Inside me, the water has muddied, churned by the legs of cows come to drink, come down from fields, layered with the unnamed dead. In my stomach, a noose. In my veins, blue promises, beaten with the feet of brutes. My heart, a cup that fills and empties, fills and empties. My cells conspire against me, many-pronged appendages leeching my energy. Microscopic fibers shadow my eyes, obscure my vision. The field is full of debris, bright flashes, the gray shadow of guilt. And the last poem I'm going to read is also in the Enough anthology. It reflects back on a time when I was very young. I was 19, I'm 72 now, so it was a long time ago. And at the time I was living in the Boston area, and I was working in an institution, state institution. And it was also at the time that Martin Luther King was shot, and there was quite a lot of unrest in the city due to that. When the children are sleeping and the cars are all parked between the lines in the parking lot, the ward doors closed and locked, you could say, this is security. You could say the glass on the nurse's station is another form of peace. But the aides sit around the table talking in voices like owls that plunge through the night. Because another man got shot, a black man. And at the table, some black woman, some Irish, some old and white. And when I hear the words, you people, I start lining up shoes, folding clothes, my teeth blading each other, my tongue a creature that's lost in my mouth. My whole body weeps, except my eyes, and I avoid the table. I avoid the swarm of agitated words like black beetles in my ears. Something is shredding here, blown like a terrible bridge into the sea. And not all the children are sleeping. One girl calls out in a voice beyond words, and I go to her, sit beside her, try to pull her back from her brutal dream. Thank you.
Judy, thank you so much. It was wonderful. Please type in the chat reactions, questions, comments. Give Judy a thumbs up, clap. We'll see you at the end of the program. Next up, we have Doug Rawlings. Doug is a Vietnam veteran who is a co-founder of the international peace group Veterans for Peace, which is dedicated to abolishing war using nonviolent strategies. He has lived in rural Maine for 45 years. His latest collection of poems, In the Shadow of the Animas Mountains, chronicles his attempts as a veteran, father, and grandfather to deal with moral injury. Doug, if you would unmute yourself and turn on your video, we'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Michael. I did unmute myself, but they tell me that the video has to be done by you. That's what I'm getting, this message that says you have to open up the video. But start my video. Okay, here we go. All right, that was not an opening line for a poem, by the way, so I apologize. Thank you, Agnes, Claire, for including me in this wonderful collection. I'm honored to be here. And Michael, thanks very much for taking care of all of this stuff. I'll read 3 poems from the Enough anthology and a couple more. The first one identifies the real enemy in this whole scenario. It's entitled On War Memorials, and I wrote it in the early 1980s before I saw Maya Lin's wonderful memorial. On War Memorials. Corporate America, be forewarned. We are your karma. We are your Orion rising in the night sky. We are the scorpion in your jackboot. Corporate America, be forewarned. We will not buy your bloody parades anymore. We refuse your worthless praise. We spit on your war memorials. Corporate America, be forewarned. We will not feed you our bodies, our minds, our children anymore. Corporate America, be forewarned. If we have our way, and we will, the real war memorials will rise from your ashes. Talking White Man Privilege Blues, Part 1. So this white guy walks into a bar. No, wait, let's say this black guy walks into a bar. Just to make it interesting, you see, there is a difference, isn't there? At least here in the land of the free. Me, I'm the white guy, privileged since birth, member of the most materially blessed subspecies ever to exist. White, male, middle-class dude, raised in mid-20th century USA, recipient of non-stares, delicious anonymity, invisible by choice, until I want something, which I usually get, seriously. But this black guy, what about him? Can't teach his daughter to ride a bike. It's too dangerous out in the streets for either one of them. Can't run in public places. Shit, can't drive through most of them. The guy behind the cash register breaks into a cold sweat when he pushes open the door. All true. But here's the catch. This system you built just for me, you can shove it up your ass. Don't want it, don't need it. It's doing me more harm than good. I don't want my purchases laced with some poor kid's blood. But what's a privileged white guy to do? Sign up for sensitivity classes? Boycott America? Write letters? Step off the sidewalk into the streets? Bleed? These are not rhetorical questions. My soul is in great need. Talking White Man Privilege Blues, Part 2. Some soft, late August night, starlit and moonless, a young man kisses his wife, tucks in his kids, and sets out to kill me. Understand, this is no paranoid fantasy. This is 1969. This is LZ Uplift. This is the Central Highlands, Vietnam. This is me coming down from my first mortar attack, taking a toke on this fact. I now know how it feels to know someone wants me dead, not because of who I am, but because of the color of my uniform. I'm shoveling out my driveway almost 5 decades later. I look to the sky, thankful I survived to live this life, follow snowflakes down to settle softly on my boots. I am white, they are white. I am safe once more under this carefully crafted privileged sky. Huddled in my bunker back then, I knew my time in country was short, could measure out the days back to my well-feathered nest. I was no black man coming home to another war zone. That's one of the untold stories of these guys coming back from Nam and then being ordered to go to Detroit and Newark and whatever and pick up their weapons to shoot their neighbors. But there are more ways to damage a culture through war other than through munitions. Here's a bicentennial poem written in 1976 in Bath, Maine. My daughter Jennifer is 2 now and can almost speak in complete sentences. Why, if this were 7 years ago and she Vietnamese, she would almost be old enough to sell her mother. My grandfather. Here's a grandfather's poem. I watched my granddaughters grow up, their heights measured by chalking the kitchen post. So I think I know something about feet and inches. As I watch grainy footage from the war of a Vietnamese grandfather, 4 arms of sinewy flesh, swinging his hammer with the authority of long experience, being interviewed by some American journalist. Staring into the hole of the camera through these 5 decades, I feel the agony of grandfathers so far removed from now, fashioning together coffin after coffin, each 3 feet long. Unexploded Ordnance, a ballad. I wrote this for Chuck Searcy and the thousands of Vietnamese who worked to clear out all of these unexploded bombs that are still in that country after that war 50 years ago. For Chuck Searcy and the thousands of Vietnamese who are working to undo what we have done, unexploded ordnance. So I was maybe all of 21 when they whipped me into some kind of soulless shape. Yet another one of America's weeping mother's sons, sent forth into this world to raise, pillage, and rape. And now it's coming on to another Christmas Eve, and songs of joy and peace fill up our little town. How, I ask myself, could I possibly believe I could do what I did and not reap what I had sown? In that land far away from what I call home, a grandfather leads his granddaughter by the hand into a field where we did what had to be done. They trip into a searing heat, brighter than 1,000 suns. My last poem is a remorse poem, if you will. I don't believe I have any right to ask the Vietnamese people to forgive me for what I did. But if I'm given forgiveness, I would greatly appreciate it. This poem's entitled The Girl in the Picture, and it calls to mind, I hope, the iconic picture from the Vietnam War of the young girl running out of a napalm village, naked and screaming. Her name is Phan Thi Kim Phuc, and as I was playing with this poem, working on it, I found out that she was 9 years old when that picture was taken of her fleeing that village. And my granddaughter at that time was 9 years old. So this is the girl in the picture for Phan Thi Kim Phuc. I begin it with a traditional line, whatever you run from becomes your shadow. Whatever you run from becomes your shadow. If you're a non-vet, a survivor of sorts, she'll come for you across the decades, casting a shadow in the dying light of your dreams, naked and nine, terror in her eyes. Of course, you'll have to ignore her if you wish to survive over the years, but then your daughters will turn 9, and then your granddaughters 9, as the shadows lengthen. So you'll have no choice on that one night screaming down the ridge road, lights off under a full moon. She's standing in the middle of the road, still naked and 9, terror in her eyes. Now you must stop to pick her up, to carry her back home to where she came from, to that gentle village where the forgiving and the forgiven gather at high noon. There are no shadows. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug. Very powerful. All right. Just want to remind everybody who's just joining us that you're listening to Literally Alive, Enough readings from Enough poems of resistance and protest. Next up, we have Arisa White. Arisa, if you would, there she is. Kindly unmute yourself as I read your bio. Arisa White is a Cave Canem Fellow and an Assistant Professor of Creative Writing at Colby College. She is the author of You're the Most Beautiful Thing That Happened, and co-author of Biddy Mason Speaks Up, winner of the Maine Literary Book Award for Young People's Literature, and the Nautilus Book Award Gold Medal for Middle Grade Nonfiction. In March 2021, Augury Books will release her poetic memoir, Who's Your Daddy? She serves on the board of directors for Foglifter and Nomadic Press. Thank you so much for joining us, Arisa. We look forward to you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Claire and Agnes, for envisioning and manifesting Enough. I'm going to be reading 3 poems, the 3 poems that are published in the anthology, in addition to a recent poem. I often join an online community where I write a poem every day just sort of email it to my group of folks. And it's just a way to keep me accountable. So I've been writing with this community since January. So these poems are pretty much a reflection of the past 9 months. This first one, I wrote this one around January and February. As close to the North Star as I can go, a lesbian living in slipper socks, flannel shirt and work boots, rugged gear to shovel toddler-high snow, de-ice walkways so the postman doesn't slip, scrawling icicles on our envelopes. The news isn't against me. Invisibility isn't as sensational without violence. Clearly, in this afterlife, no one sees the sorry lingerie ghosting in this deathbed. Through these pains, a poster child for the opioid epidemic is windblown, breath of his nightmares, radon in air. The Army vet installing our mitigation system says lesbians on tour were falsely reporting rape. No transition from PVC pipes to reports from the field, except for the grammar of our marriage. My vow to her vowel is in Afghani in his eye. We are not modern in our naming. Already implied in our carpet munching is non-conformity. The fluidity of our scissoring is mermaidic. They cannot see this loving versus United States. When the bill comes, yes, we are together. When cashiers want to check us out, I'm living in the bull dagger of my mind. And this poem came about during April and May, just sort of at the height of our shelter in place, sort of transitioning from teaching face-to-face to online and everything, it's just it's still crazy. Some of us are masked, some of us are muzzled. I can tell you who masturbates themselves awake, who's caffeine straight. Mother Nature makes clouds so coke line perfect, your postnasal drips. My brain is dust, and instead of seeing me as exhausted, my wife calls me arrogant. Too arrogant to turn my head and look into her eyes. But the sun has a whip appeal. Our bodies become landing strips for a small circle of light in a matter of days. We'll peak medical resource utilization. I take a long hot bath with Epsom salts to clear 5G from my field. So now I'm a better projector. For some reason, I thought my mother's birthday falling on its usual day meant my book would get an Image Award. I eat too much dairy, sugar, and become lethargic, phlegmatic, soft blended cottons before sunup to further notice. A text 10:30 confirms my doppelganger has taken my place in Oakland, California. Every time you walk into a supermarket, you're traumatized by empty shelves. A Tanzanian pawpaw and goat tested positive. How many deaths drawn like keyholes per day? The science predicts into our furlough, coded 19 speech part Mandarin and Black. Viruses make us minor in our thinking. We clutch our breath and glove our waves. With a grave distance between us, we assemble at the gates, but the gates will not open for the sanitized and vaccinated. Our new panic order, a storage refrigerator for the future and meats. My wife paints the master bedroom in paradise, a zygotic whisper of pink. Depending on my mood, I won't abort. I keep coming back to the word sacrifice, keep departing from what organism are we becoming? The playground is wrapped in caution. Our classrooms are learning without us. Some things rest in you soundlessly, some things toss and turn. I have closeted myself away from the news, fellas. When I say Trump, ladies, you say Trump. And quarter-size actionable chunks scream for the outside to come back to life. Listen, messages linger in my inbox asking how I'm holding up. These are experiments in calisthenics, dissemblance to the core, or child's pose. And so I wrote this one in September, and this just came about from like watching a lot of Netflix and HBO Max. So the two drama series I mentioned, or the one drama series I mentioned is I May Destroy You, and the movie on Netflix, Cuties. That's my problem. I watch I May Destroy You, cringe at the drug and alcohol consumption, be like, too much, that's too much. Don't take a drink from which you do not know from where it came, the intentions of all the hands that bring it to you. And why so many bumps? Why again? Maybe don't mix alcohol, and don't mix hallucinogenics with uppers. All my compartments are slurring, perfect divides leaking into each other. The peas are touching my fish needs a whole plate for itself. I can't stand a sex scene without a condom wrapper tearing, an arm reaching to the side table, all those gestures to move the body safely into another body, and I nearly threw a fit reading a public service announcement at the bus stop. Why is syphilis back? Why the fuck is syphilis rising? Why have infection rates increased among young adults? Then, this child in Cuties could be a younger version of Michaela Cole, blowing up a pink used condom found in some bushes into a boob like the 11-year-old she is, and I'm squealing with her friends, disgusted that this child has learned to put random shit from the ground in or near her mouth. Even with the 5-second rule, you know the fallen food. So the children must teach the child. That's what people with AIDS use. And oh, this misleading simplification, lemmings following sheeples to the likes. And the panic my mother felt, jumping up and down to compel the sperm to fall from her 13-year-old vagina into the cotton crotch of her panties, because this is plan B. Dumb the black child's cries, she who looks terribly abandoned in shame and fear, a silhouette sapling of pornographic womanhood. From the literal lips of babes, she tells us, all us, it's not her fault she don't know what a condom is. And this last one. My beautiful people, we've seen this before, we've felt this before. We're standing on shoulders and someone's standing on yours. And crying heals and clears your vision, attunes the eyes on the back of your head, forges your insight with salt. This is the beauty of being awake in your body. Your water wets the truth in yourself. We feel it deep in reaching spiral flutter and electric rush, the duff of undarkened know-how, rooting for everyone who's Black, We need sun, and these screens distract us from absorbing our greatest star. This is the time to grow your next level leaves. Break ways you're complacent and complicit to sacrificial roles our bodies play in this sociopathic, white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalistic dominator apparatus. Check where shade casts upon your intersections. Too many masters turning loops for the same trick narrative. We are going to breathe and breathe better. Notify everyone around us that in addition to the breathing we already do, we're taking 40 minutes each day for breathing, for all the air we can cycle in and out of us, for all the breath chased from our bodies. We will create the conditions to nurture us by first nurturing our own unique human designs, by cultivating a deep understanding of our bodies in relation to other bodies, and knowing time as the attention needed to place a current event within a historical tree, because nothing thrives on today alone.
Arisa, thank you so much for that. That's incredibly powerful. I feel like I want to pause for a while, but I'd like to move on to Maya Williams. And please, please, please put comments in your chat, in our chat, your comments in our chat. Maya is a Black and mixed race suicide survivor residing in Portland, Maine. Maya has published poems with Glitter Mob, the Portland Press Herald, Black Table Arts, Oculum, Pensive Journal, Homology Lit, just to name a few. Maya is the 2019 Best of the Net nominee and a winner of Port Fringe's Audience Choice Award for their spoken word showcase, Speaking with an Extraterrestrial. Maya is also the recipient of residencies with Hugh Oaks, Sundressed Academy for the Arts, and Voices of Our Nation. You can find Maya hosting open mics on Tuesday nights with Port Veritas and facilitating writing workshops on Sunday mornings on Zoom. You can follow Maya's work via her website, mayawilliamspoet.com, and please support Maya through Venmo at MayaWilliams16. She's also on Patreon. Maya, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having all of us. Arisa, those poems were so beautiful. Thank you all for who is reading. As what was stated, I'm Maya. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. The time is 7:43, so I'll be sure to stop at 7:53 to the best of my ability. The first poem that I will read is not in the anthology, but it's for the lovely poet Wanda Coleman and how her poems have been getting me through this time. I have waited 3 months for Wanda Coleman's book. It kept getting delayed. Phone calls did not make the delivery faster. Neither did breezing through books I had in the meantime. 1 week ago, it arrived at Print Bookstore, safe in its brown paper bag at the curbside. The page is smooth to the touch with no sign of worn discoloration, but they know what comes next in my captivity. This week, my anxiety threatens my mortality. Withdrawal-induced headaches from lack of internal chemical vibrations. Withdrawal-induced spit builds under my tongue from lack of dry mouth. Tears over an article about police officers who got fired for killing porcupines instead of for killing Black people. I read Wanda's work. Wrapped in my partner's plaid blanket, I realize that God waited for the right time for me to reach sustenance. Sonnets that decolonize my mind about form. Idioms that hold me like my grandmother's arms in an embrace. Room to cast curses to mitigate apocalyptic harm. It's too cold outside, and amidst all the upheaval God allowed, amidst the wait for new medication, amidst the need to take a break from the news cycle, God allowed space for soup. Thank you. This next poem is in the anthology, and I want to name that not like, yes, defund the police, yes, abolish the police, defund all aspects of the carceral system. And this poem that was accepted by Enough is entitled Why Incarceration is Not Working. It is an act of concrete cramping on wildflowers, given the misnomer of weeds to invalidate their importance. It is an act of scratching at sores you know would heal properly if you stopped trying to make them bleed. It is an act of persecution. There is no sugarcoating it. I will not make this bile you've given into custard when you are actively starving others. No one can settle for the "you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all" mantra anymore when your actions speak louder than your words. No one can settle for the "don't ask, don't tell" mantra anymore when your secrets are not for safekeeping, but for hazard. No one owes you any more euphemisms of your lack of attention and service. Stop wondering about others' accountability when you should be more concerned with your own. Thank you. The next poem is not in the anthology. It is an erasure poem of a job offering from Long Creek Youth Development Center. Long Creek needs to be shut down, and there are great organizations working towards that, especially Maine Inside Out and Maine Youth Justice. I will link their organizations in the chat. An erasure of a job opening at Long Creek Youth Development Center on Indeed. Job description: employee enforces rules. This classification is distinguished from a primary focus of rehabilitation of youth. Knowledge, skills, and abilities required to perform the job successfully. Control detainees. Knowledge of security practices. Effectively prepare to exercise judgment. Ability to order and control. Ability to provide a negative and hostile environment. And again, I'll share those links in the chat as soon as I'm done. And this last poem is in the anthology, and it's one of my favorite poems that I've written, actually. It's after Olivia Gatwood and Jennifer Javon. And this is for the Black and brown femmes that I've met in Portland, especially walking down Congress Street, whether I'm familiar with them and they're loved ones of mine, or we only met once through a passing glance, and this is for them. I want to write a poem to every Black and brown femme with earbuds in their ears, slowly strolling or quickly pacing on Congress Street every morning to catch a bus, catch an appointment, catch someone who had the nerve to try them. I want to write a poem to every Black and brown femme with earbuds in their ears, hands in pockets for warmth, only making eye contact with fellow Black and brown people before their separate turns at their respective intersections. I want to write a poem to every Black and brown femme with earbuds in their ears, listening to songs or podcasts they feel they can never play at home or work, or they do play them at both places and need repetition in their steps downtown. I want to write a poem to every Black and brown femme with earbuds in their ears, turning the volume up to block out the pro-lifers, the catcallers, the dead namers, misgenderers, the well-meaning white strifers. I want to write a poem to every Black and brown femme with earbuds in their ears, because all day in our shoes is a struggle for us. All day trying to stay alive is a struggle for us, and we still wake up to walk up and down, run up and run down Congress Street anyway. Thank you so much for the time. Those were the only poems that I had. As what was named, you can donate to my Venmo or donate to my Patreon. And again, I will type the respective links to Maine Inside Out, Maine Youth Justice, as well as the Maine Prisoners Advocacy Coalition. Thank you all so much for your amazing work and for this lovely anthology. Please purchase this anthology. There's a lot of great work in here. Thank you.
Maya, I want more readings, please. All of you, Arisa, Doug, and Judy, what a wonderful night. How powerful. And I hope that you'll all share your social media, your websites, any way for people to follow you. Please type it in the chat. And before we move on to questions, I just want to take a moment and announce that November 14th, Literally Alive will be an open mic poetry event. We have room for 10 readers. If you are on the Littoral Books mailing list, or if you have published with Littoral in the past, you will be receiving a call to action in the next few days. Look out for it, spaces are limited. And we hope that our readers tonight will certainly join in. And so now, if you have questions, please type them into the chat or unmute yourselves. And I'm hoping that some of the readers have some of our poets have questions for each other. I certainly have tons of questions. Would anybody like to ask a question from the public? Please unmute yourself. I have a question, and it's for all of the poets. And you can decline, or you can give a short answer, however you'd like. When did you know you wanted to be a poet? I know that's a trite question, but I ask that of all of my artist friends. When did you know? When did you get your calling? Who would like to start? No one's biting.
I think it started, you know, for me, like really young. I'm from a large family. I'm one of 7 children. So we spent a lot of time playing with each other, making movies, pretending to be in a rap group. We choreographed like musicals. I mean, so there was something about this creative energy within my family, and then just gathering within my larger family, and the storytelling aspect of our coming together. Just, I don't know, it was just ground for me becoming a poet. I loved the way I understood and apprehended language, from like English Creole. My grandmother has Geechee roots, just Brooklyn street slang, all of that just made me want to use language as a material, like paint.
I was in a corner bookstore on October 18th, 1970 in Boston, Harvard Square. And I was all-night bookstore, and I was roaming around looking for something. I'd just gotten back from Vietnam, was totally confused. And I found a collection of poems by Denise Levertov about her experience as a peace activist in North Vietnam. I picked that up and I read that, and I said, this is the closest to the truth about that war that I found yet. And so from that point on, I was a huge fan of hers, Muriel Rukeyser, people like her, Robert Bly. So that's how it started for me.
Thank you both for sharing. Maya, would you like to share?
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
I started writing from a very young age, but started to engage in spoken word poetry in high school, and started competing in slam in college, as well as started publishing my work in college and grad school.
Judy, would you like to share?
Sure. I think high school was probably when I really got into reading and writing poetry. Denise Levertov also was a poet that I admired. Allen Ginsberg, E.E. Cummings, Ferlinghetti, you know, just all the beat poets. So yeah, I just love language. My mother used to read to me when I was little, and I think that was more than anything else what started my love of language.
Well, I think I speak for the group when we thank all of you for your voices and for sharing with Littoral Books your poems.
Are you wrapping up? Because I would like to say something.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Go ahead.
Yeah, Judy, I really admired the way the place you take in what's happening in your poems. And I found them very moving, and they work beautifully for me. I don't put things in the chat because they distract me when people are talking. And so I didn't send you a chat right away, but I wanted you to know how much I appreciated your reading.
Oh, thank you, Martin. Yeah, it's good to hear from you. And I look forward to listening to you read as well.
Thank you. Thank you all. We have more time if anybody else would like to ask questions. Agnes, did you have any comments or questions?
I just wanted to reiterate what you said, Robert, and thank everyone who's in the book, everyone who contributed poems, everyone who's buying the book, because it's really important that we buy the book and give it to your friends for presents, and tell people about it, especially before the election. I think it's really a timely and vital work. So please just spread the word out. And thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Any other
John?
questions? Poets to poets?
John has a question. Aside from yourselves, who are the poets, especially young ones, who move you most?
All right.
I can start off by answering that. I don't know what you mean by young, but I'm just gonna name some contemporary poets that I'm loving right now. Terrence Hayes, Patricia Smith, Claudia Rankin, Nikki Finney, Nandy Connor, Sam Sachs, Morgan Parker, Aria D. Matthews, Dinesh Smith, Franny Choi, just enough from style.
For me, young is a relative term. Doug Anderson really moves me. Bill Earhart, they're poets from the Vietnam experience, and younger poets would be Afghan and Iraq War veterans, particularly women poets and men poets who are coming back. And a lot of them, the ones that I really get inspired by were medics, actually, in the military service. And for some reason, they have an eye for things that move me a great deal. So that's who I'm looking to.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, young is a relative term. Jericho Brown, I'm really in love with his work. I also tend to buy a lot of books that my friends write, and I have a friend, Sarah Jane Sloat. Some of you may know her. This is her recent work, Hotel Almighty, and she does marvelous erasure poems.
Maya, would you like to contribute to a list?
Yeah, sure. Some poets I can list. Mia Willis, they won either the 2018 or 2019 Cave Canem Chapbook Contest. Shay Alexi wrote the book Diary of a Ghost Girl. George Abraham, their book Birthright, talking a lot about Palestine and queerness and gender identity. Some others. And yeah, again, the word young is a strange and relative word, but Ross Gay, and Michael Lee. I can go on and Tanaya Winder is an excellent Indigenous poet. I love her work very much.
Can I ask a question to Judy and Maya? What's an erasure poem? Excuse my ignorance, but.
An erasure poem is where you take an original documentation of work and then you take out certain phrases or words or letters, and you only read what's left behind on the page.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
You should, Doug, you should totally check out Tracy K. Smith's erasure poem of the Declaration of Independence. It was posted in the New Yorker, and she also did a recording of it, just to get you started.
Thank you. I went to her reading in Lewiston last year. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Sasha Banks has an incredible collection called America Mine, and there's a whole section of erasure poems that lists the presidential order in a very skillful and purposeful way. So check that book out if you want to look at more erasure poems.
Thank you.
Well, I feel like the conversation has just gotten started and it's 8 o'clock. So we're going to have to end it here, but hopefully we'll have all of you back at some point. You'll be reading more. Who knows, maybe in the future we'll have a conversational type of Literally Alive where poets and writers just chat with each other, which I think would be awfully exciting. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank all of the participants, Judy, Arisa, Doug, and Maya. And thank you all of the audience members. And we'll see you on November 14th for our poetry reading. I'm Robert Diamante for Literally Alive. Goodbye.
Have a good night.
I wish you could, yeah, give you all a hug. Thanks for the readings, all of you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you.